Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Stories of Awakening podcast. Today, I have with me Sadie Olson. She's a manifestation coach, but very importantly, she was my first coach. So if you listen to my podcast since the beginning, every time that I mentioned my first coach and I was talking about Sadie, uh, here she is now. And I'm very excited for this. I really feel is a kind of a full cycle for me.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for accepting, and thank you so much for being here, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited we get to catch up. And what's crazy is I was your first coach and you were like my first client that I worked with long term. And so this is kind of full circle for me too. And there's some changes happening in the business that I've been co-running with my best friend, and I'm kind of coming back to doing some coaching by myself again, and it's just really, of course, I'm not surprised, but it's always strange how the universe lines these up. But I'm hanging out with Valentina again, just like the beginning, coming back home to that version of my business. It's so cool. I'm so excited that we're hanging out today.
I'm so excited too. And before starting, I just wanted to say thank you because you really open all this possibility for me. You taught me about mindset, manifestation, magic, and I never heard anything like that before. So you were the first one that told me all these things.
Wow.
And I remember that I was asking you all the crazy stuff that were in my mind, all the questions. You had an answer for everything, or you were giving me the right, the right resources. I asked you so many other kind of readings. You have someone that was doing Akashic records or astrology or everything. So I really have to thank you because you open this path for me, and you
Oh my
really,
gosh.
really changed my life. So I wanted to say thank you.
I'm gonna start crying right away at the beginning of the You know what's so amazing is when I met you, one of the biggest things we were working on was using your voice. And now you
Mhm.
have a freaking podcast. Think about our first time we ever met. If you would ever have
I
imagined
know.
yourself having a podcast, this is so amazing. It's
It
just
is
it just
crazy, yeah.
lights my heart on fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I still work in progress for me is one of my biggest
Me
fears,
too,
still being sick and
always.
everything. But yeah, uh, yeah, I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so
Oh,
much.
I'm so happy. Thrilled to hear that.
So, um, since this podcast is Stories of Awakening, would you like to tell us your stories and your transformations and how you arrived where you are today?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many parts to this story. Where to even begin? I guess
You
I'll
pick
start with
one.
where I am now, and we can kind of work our way backwards maybe a
I
little
like
bit.
it.
So
Yeah.
so where I am now, I'm saying hi from Bali, Indonesia. I'm working as a digital nomad, traveling full time, which was always my biggest dream, since that was a thing, since social media was invented when I was in high school and people started doing this, which was about 15 years ago. This was my dream, but I never allowed it to actually be named as a dream because it felt so out of reach and so impossible. So it was sort of a thing that I desired, but I didn't allow it to be even a goal for me for so long. And now I'm here and I'm living it, and it's totally freaking surreal. And I really can't believe it. I happy cry almost every day. It's so cool. So that's where I'm at now. For most of my adult life, I worked in retail. I was a retail manager. And I think that was an important decade of my life, literal decade, because I was managing teams. A lot of the part of that job that I enjoyed, I didn't like the operational, I didn't like stacking jeans or or really trying to help a customer with a return, but I loved managing a team, and I always was really connected to the people and was talking to them about their lives, and without really knowing it, this was practice for what I ended up realizing was my purpose, was to help people live more purpose-driven, fulfilling lives. So that's sort of my background, is that I worked for a decade in retail. And then pandemic hit and I had all this time on my hands because my store was not an essential store. It was shut down. I didn't have to go to work. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my time. I am going to figure out however I possibly can to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how or what that's going to look like, but gosh darn it, I've got time on my hands and I'm going to figure it out. And this was where I invested in my first coach at the very beginning of the pandemic. Catherine Zankina, Manifestation Babe. I'm sure listeners have heard of them if they're in the manifestation world. But that was my first ever coach. And from there, I became obsessed. I continued to hire new mentors whenever one program or mentorship ran out. I was straight into the new one. And I realized like, this is it. I'm getting chills right now, like remembering all this. I realized this is it. This is the world I want to be in. This is what I want to do. So I continued, being coached. I started going into business mentorships to learn how to build a business like that, like this. I went into an intuitive development program, accidentally became a psychic. That was a crazy part of all of this, and started offering my coaching services about like 8 months into this, like obsessive 24/7, like learning, growing, evolving, just quantum leaped my way into a whole new life. And that's when Valentina and I connected. She was one of my first clients. And you really instilled in me, such a confidence that like I did make a difference, and I could be good at this. And I always felt so like joyful and energized whenever you had a question pop into our Voxer chat, or when we met, like I'd be dancing after our calls, and I was like, this is it. This is how it's supposed to feel when you're living in your purpose, when your work is what you're supposed to be doing. Like I'm all in. And so that was sort of one big part of the transformation. Any questions so far? I'm like running through it all.
No, I just wanted to say that we had a similar story from what you said so far, because it happened the same for me during the pandemic, but to me was probably, for you was at the beginning of 2020. For me, it was towards the end. I started to invest with you, and then it was initially 3 months, and then I extended it for 5 and then I invested in so many other programs that you suggested, or other readings. I became obsessed as well, and as well I started to think it was slower for me, the process, but I think this is how I'm built. I'm just slower in general. And I was this is it, am I supposed to do this? Like, I really love this. I was obsessed. I was just reading about all the books. I was taking courses. I couldn't stop learning. So very, very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we do similar jobs now.
We do, which is so cool. And like, I just can't get enough of it. And I think that's like, the biggest thing I teach on is discovering your purpose. And if there's something that you love being a student on, sometimes it's hard for us to open our mind and see like, maybe I can be a leader in this space, because we view ourselves as the student. But for anyone listening who's like, oh my gosh, like, where's my next big transformation? Like, that's why I'm here, is to find, hear these stories and feel encouraged and find my own, path to transformation. And like, what do you love being a student on? Probably this kind of stuff is one thing if if you love Valentina's work, and maybe there's other things too. And open your mind and allow yourself to see how maybe you could take up space in that part of your world, because that was the big realization, is like, I can't stop devouring these books and sitting in on these calls and investing my money in this feels so good and so exciting. And that's such a big clue into like what's going to make you feel like so fulfilled and lit up in your life. I think it's so important. Like, what do you love learning about? Do more of that.
Exactly. What you are obsessed talking about too. I realized I was talking about it with everyone, even if they weren't interested. So
right. And they're like, oh, okay.
I said, I have to do this. Yeah. And one of the things that, so it was working about we worked together on sharing my voice and being seen and stuff like that, but also when I wrote down things that I wanted to manifest. One was bringing mindfulness to my European office. I shared this story already in my first episode or second one, I don't remember, but and while I was working in finance, and I remember after 3 months with you, actually they asked if someone had some ideas on how to make people feel better, and I actually volunteered, and so that was the first manifestation, conscious manifestation, because we manifest all the time, but yeah, and it was incredible for me. And the other one, like after 5 months with you, to me, I had such a clear idea of who I was. Of course, it's still unfolding and it will change and evolve constantly, but at least I knew that I wanted to do something about holistic health, spirituality, or something like that. And before you, this was totally unclear. I really didn't have an idea. So that's why I also tell, my friends or people, not necessarily invest with me, but, a coach will really, you will get to your mission and your calling, but if you invest in this self-development, spiritual growth, you will get there so much faster. In fact, after between 3 and 5 months, I had a clear idea what I wanted to do. It was crazy.
Yeah. It's incredible how, for so long we can just kind of like push it aside, that feeling that maybe there's something more, maybe I'm meant for something more. Our ego's like, no, you're doing what you're supposed to do. Like, you're doing fine for yourself. You have a good job. You're making enough money. It doesn't matter, like, just make the most of it. You should be grateful. And it's like, yeah, you can be grateful for what you have, and you can also want more. That's perfectly fine. And it's like, I think, we incarnate as humans to go on that journey. Like, that's part of the game, or part of the purpose of life, is the self-discovery. Like, that's the fun of it. There's no arriving. Like you said, like, we're always changing and evolving. Who I am today is probably going to be different than who I am tomorrow, and definitely different from who I was last week. And being aware of that, and having fun with that, and knowing like, oh my gosh, how exciting that I'm always changing and evolving and growing. That awareness, it really does make you, I know quantum leap is a buzzy word, but it's true. Like, it's pretty incredible how quickly your life opens up when you get intentional about like, simply, who am I?
Yeah. And I think it's not that you become someone different, you become more and more yourself. This is what I noticed. Yeah. So you're peeling off all these layers that are not you, and you finally become who you were meant to be.
Yeah, that's, in my signature program, Activate Your Magic, we dedicate a whole week. It's literally like one of the modules is called Remember Who You Are, because it is that. It's not creating Frankensteining some new version of you together, like putting together new pieces. It's taking off the layers and being like, what's under all of these, layers, these jackets I put on of like what my parents thought I should be, and what, my friends thought I should be, and what society told me I should be, and who's under there. And that's who it is. It's totally a remembering and coming back home.
Exactly. So I'm curious to know about, if you are comfortable talking about it, maybe your childhood, if you had experiences that were telling you already that this was your path, but you put together the information just later when you realized it, or how was how your family took it, all these kind of things.
That's such a fun question. So it's interesting, when you're a kid, you're just a kid, right? And then when you get older and you reflect back on, especially once you start kind of remembering who you are and uncovering your purpose, and you look back and you go, oh, I've been this all along. Like, when I was little, like, I had no question about it. And it's so funny. I think back and I'm like, I must have been like such a weird kid for for my parents, because I was always super obsessed, and I was raised Catholic. So I was always really spiritually inclined. And so all I knew was Catholicism. But at a young age, I was really already thinking very deeply, and I would have a lot of questions in my head. I was like, I really feel spiritually connected, but not all of this, like my mind was already feeling like not all of this makes sense to me or speaks to me. And I didn't really have a way to express that. So I just kind of tried to throw myself in further and force it a little bit. But like I grew up through 6th grade going to Catholic school, and I would like, and this is so funny and so me. I only read 2 things. I was like an avid reader. Like my parents would ground me from reading if they needed to discipline me because I always was in a book. And I read 2 different things. I would read Harry Potter over and over, or I would read the Bible because I was trying to figure out what life meant. Literally, I was a little kid and I was reading the Old Testament, and I was like, I'd be asking my mom, I'd be like, what is this? This is weird. Like, what is that about? And in school, I'd be like that little asshole that like had to be like, this doesn't make sense. And God bless my teachers. They were like so chill and always had good answers for me. But looking back, like I was always like so involved mentally and like trying to like figure out the meaning of life at a very young age. And I also grew up with my mom being the same way, honestly. She, again, like I'm growing up in a Catholic family. She grew up in a Catholic family, but she was always meditating and exploring energy healing. And I'm from a rural small town in Wisconsin. So this is like really freaky there. Like people don't do this. It is not the norm. I was the one with the like totally weird hippie mom. I always call her like a J. Crew hippie because she like dressed really preppy, but on the inside she was, you know, all like organic and natural and naturopathic medicine and all of this stuff. But she, you know, I would go to like learn how to be a qigong healer, like classes with her and do all of these different things. So, and I have children right now, and my mom has passed on, and I feel like she's so present with us here right now. She's like, oh, they're talking about me. I want to listen in. But I totally grew up, you know, I realize now as I've gotten older in the work I'm doing that like I am more my mother every single day. And I very much feel like she's a part of all of this. I, you know, often in meditation or, you know, whenever you would want to like call your mom, like I have the witchy psychic woo-woo mom and I have to call her spiritually now. But she's helped me so much in my business, even, you know, from the other side. And so my childhood was very like kind of funny. Like no one else had parents like that growing up. And my dad is very like traditional, but he was just like, yeah, do what you guys want. I don't know. It's weird, but I'm happy if you're happy. And then as I got a little older, became a teenager, you know, that like teenage angst, agony. It's really, you know, I just saw a video of someone describing like the reason teenagers feel so angsty is because we're going through a spiritual death. We're leaving our childhoods, we're approaching adulthood. Our entire world is changing. And that really clicked for me. And I really lost that spiritual connection. I really felt alone. I felt very in the dark. I felt incredibly anxious and depressed, and I had a really hard time. And so this carried on into my early 20s, and still just like not finding my way back to that spiritual inclination. I didn't consider myself Catholic anymore, but I had a lot of guilt about that. And I had a lot of stories in my head about like, is this wrong? Is this bad? Even though it's what I was drawn to. And so there was a lot of work to unpack with, you know, like Catholic guilt. And when I was 24, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was incredibly shocking. And we ended up losing her 8 months after her diagnosis, which was incredibly difficult. Me and my mom were so close. I'm so grateful that I had an amazing relationship with her. I'm so grateful that I had 24 years with her. She was just the most amazing, bright, radiant, sunshiny person anyone ever met in our small town. She was a nurse who would secretly whisper, like, can I heal you with Qigong? And like, you should use these herbs, like totally not supposed to do that shit. at work. You should use these herbs to heal when you get home. It'll go fine with your prescription. Like she was that person. And so she was a healer. She was her own version of a witch like me, and a little guide in our community. And it was amazing at her wake. Like there was a line outside and completely surrounding the entire building we were in of people that came to say, like, your mom changed my life. Your mom saved me. Your mom, put me back on track, which was really powerful I had no idea. And it sort of planted the seed of how, my mom didn't have some big social media presence. My mom she was just doing her job and living her life led by what felt really good for her, but she was naturally inclined. She was always reading books about herbs and homeopathics and always learning about energy healing and always meditating. And she just graciously gave out that knowledge to anyone and everyone she met. And she had this insane impact that we didn't really even know about. And for me, of course, I want to build my business and reach millions and grow and grow. And that's great. But I guess it taught me, like, don't underestimate the impacts you can have within your own community and in a small space. Cause like I said, I'm from a small town and social media wasn't really a thing back then. She wasn't building a business out of this. And so the few years after that, I still felt incredibly lost, but it was sort of the domino, I think, that flipped. And growing up, I was always obsessed with what's the meaning of life, what's purpose. I always felt so spiritually inclined. And then after she passed, it was like this urgent need. There must be a meaning to life. There must be something more. I can't live like how I'm living. And it's not that my life was really bad. I had a job. I had enough, money. I was doing fine. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I had people who loved me and I loved them in my life. But underneath it all, I was still miserable. And I felt really guilty about that. Like, how can I have this many good things and still feel so awful? And so eventually, my mom passing, I think, ultimately saved me. And I was able to find myself and prioritize it. And it really happened over time and a slow buildup where I would start meditating every day and then I would lose it again and go into dip into a valley and completely feel like I was in the dark again and try and reach for it again. And like I said, that when the pandemic first hit in 2020, I was like, I have all the time in the world. I'm figuring this out. I'm finding my purpose. I'm not going back to work. I cannot, I refuse. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it felt crazy. And I felt honestly stupid for a long time. The mental, it wasn't there yet. The mindset wasn't there. I thought I was like ridiculous for thinking that I could do something, oh, I'm not capable enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever enough to build a business for myself. But I pushed and pushed and pushed and remained adamant. And, it's 3 years later now, and I never have gone back to a job. And it hasn't always been easy, but it's been the most fulfilling, incredible, magical 3 years of my life since that big, I would say, awakening in 2020 at the very beginning, like literally January, I think, like Christmas Day of 2019, I learned about the word, I came across Manifestation Babe, and I wasn't on manifestation social media at all. I had no idea people were coaches for this. I had no idea this was a thing. And I was like, oh my God. And from there, it all took off. So it's been a lot, but when I look back to my childhood, it was there all along. It was obvious, when you look back with 2020 vision.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's similar for me in a sense that since I have memory, I was asking myself, why am I here? Who am I? What's the reason of all of this? And yeah, it took me a long time to find the answers. And I was raised, well, I'm from Italy, so we have the church, the Pope. So of course that has a big influence. But I remember, for example, I watched a movie with my parents. I must have been 6 years old, and it was about Holy Mary, I think you call it in English, appearing to three young kids, and it was teaching them to pray. Since I saw that movie, I started to pray every single day before falling asleep, because I felt it was something that really was part of me. I could connect with something else. And again, I didn't have the knowledge, the words. My parents didn't even force me to do it. It was something that I felt the need to do it. And those were the tools that I saw at that time. And it came naturally for me to do it. But then, yeah, I, of course, changed many phases as well. There was a time where I really didn't care about any of these things. And it was, I think about, probably teenage years. And then, yeah, when things got difficult again, for me, I started to question life and what I was doing with my life. And finally, during the pandemic, because of the silence and the quiet time that I had at the time, I could hear the answers. Yes.
I think I hear that a lot about that time period for all of us, because a lot of us, we just all of a sudden had all this time on our hands, and we're like, oh, I usually don't have this much time with my thoughts, and the questions start coming in like, why am I here? What is the meaning? We weren't as busy. We had nowhere to go, nowhere to be, no one to hang out with and distract ourselves with, and we were just like with ourselves, and that was really difficult. But I think it was, for a lot of us, we figured out how to make the most of it, and it really became like this amazing domino effect in our life. And it had this effect on both of our lives, where we're here and living in our purpose and doing amazing things.
Yeah. If we want to find the reason for the pandemic, this is, to me, the reason why it happened, to give it a chance to for people really to sit down and realign their lives.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you this. So I never shared this before, but you connected me with my granddad. So so I was very open to hear everything that you had to teach me about manifestation and spirituality and everything, but there was still some skepticism. But I can say after that, I said, okay, that's true. There are no reason now not to believe in these spirit words anymore. And I wanted to ask you how you discovered that you had those psychic and mediumship abilities.
Yeah. So I, again, like looking back on my childhood, maybe there could be some instances where I could say maybe that was like picking up on things psychically, but honestly, like I didn't grow up seeing ghosts or talking to spirit or anything like that. I definitely had this really indescribable, unnameable connection, like I mentioned, but I didn't like grow up having these like, I wasn't a kid where I was like, Mom, I remember my past life or anything like that. And so I had really like no reason to believe like, maybe I'm psychic. But my podcast co-host and business partner, Juliet, we met because we were co-workers at our last, quote, real jobs that we ever had. And so we kind of went through this process together when we were both, like the store shut down because we were working at a crystal store, so quote, non-essential. And we both unknowingly at the same time invested in the Manifestation Babe program, which was really funny. I like texted her. I was like, oh my God, I did it. I decided to enroll. And she was like, no way. So did I. It was like so funny. But we became very close. And later that year in the summer, she won a giveaway for a reading from our soon to be mentor, medium Megan Hart. And so she went to get this reading done. She was like totally mind blown. And she had this intuitive nudge where she was like, I feel like I want to do a mentorship with Megan. Like, and she was the same way, didn't grow up psychic, didn't grow up seeing anything, but she just had this voice in her head saying like, you could do that. Like, go learn. And then Juliet started being able to do these psychic readings, and she practiced with me, and she practiced connecting with my mom, and she was like telling me what my home back in Wisconsin looked at, like the full layout, as though my mom was giving her a tour. And so it was bonkers, because of course we had been friends at this point. So spirit will help give information to prove that you're having like a valid experience. So my mom came to her and was like, well, Juliet knows a lot about me because she's friends with Sadie. But you know what she doesn't know? You know what Sadie's never talked about? The floor plan of the house she grew up in. So she gave her this like tour of my house. And I was like, I've known Juliet for a year now. Like, she's not, as far as I know, and as far as she says, she's never been psychic before. So I was like, well, I want to be psychic. So I decided to sign up for a mentorship with medium Megan Hart. And sure enough, very quickly, these abilities opened up. And that's sort of one of like my core beliefs and things I teach. It's a part of the membership I lead. We do 2 intuitive development circles every month, because I really believe we're all psychic, and it can open up a bit more easily to some than others. But it's just like any other, like, some people are really naturally talented at basketball, and some people have to practice more to get there. But we can all probably, for the most part, figure out how to like dribble a basketball and try and shoot a hoop. And I think intuition, it's just a built-in mechanism. We have our pineal gland. We have these energy centers. Like, it's not like a special gift given to a chosen few. There are people that are naturally wide open and it's really, really strong, but it is something that we can develop. And I opened up to it very quickly with her guidance. But ultimately, what I realized was that we don't categorize it as being psychic a lot of the psychic information that we're receiving on a daily basis. And if we were to really like recognize like, oh, that's weird that I knew what they were about to say before they said it, that's being psychic.
Yeah.
Oh, like this happened, or like I heard a song playing in my head and then it was the next song that came on the radio. That's clairaudience. That's being psychic. So I really truly believe we're all psychic, and it's about recognizing it. And then with mediumship, which the distinction there is being able to connect to a spirit who's passed on. I think that's just so when you're receiving psychic information, that's a higher vibration. We're tapping into a vibration. I don't really like thinking we have to reach up to it, but a higher vibration, and mediumship is an even higher vibration beyond that. So it's really just a practice in recognizing these different frequencies. And it's a little bit more difficult to get there. Now that I don't do it consistently as a medium, I'm not working as a medium now. I have more doubts about it. I'm not in practice, but if I were to say like, I want to do mediumship again, I have no doubt that like it would open up very quickly again as soon as I did a couple practice sessions. So to me, I think it's available to all of us. And I have lots and lots of women in my membership who will stay the same. We're all quote normal people who are interested in these things, and they're doing practice readings every month. They're reading each other. They're tapping into both spirits who have passed on and alive people, and they're getting so much right, and it's pretty mind-blowing. And honestly, I need to collect the statistics and maybe write a book on this someday, because these aren't people coming into the membership being like, well, I grew up seeing ghosts, so it's time to figure out if I'm psychic. It's people being like, I have no proof in my life whatsoever, and I feel kind of silly doing this, but I'm curious. And like, every single person is picking up on psychic information. It's really cool.
It is so cool.
Yeah, it's just about getting intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think we all have access to that, and we all have different abilities as well. Someone will see, someone will hear, someone will just know, probably. So, but yeah, I think we can all tap into it. And I think this is a very important job that you are doing, because intuition, I think, is really the only way we can
Yeah,
achieve the life that we actually want, and realize who is saying the truth, or who we should follow, or where to move, or which job to do. So yeah, absolutely. It's no logic,
absolutely.
it's intuition.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's very fun work to do.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
So maybe you said already quite a few things about what you do, but if I don't know if you want to add anything else, otherwise you can share with my audience where people can find you, how they can work with you, what you're offering right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my work really, at its core is about discovering your divine purpose. And so you can manifest your dream life. Without that clarity and direction, it's hard to really step into like, I'm living the dream right now. So I really love starting at the core and helping you create clarity, create that vision, and then teaching the way I manifest, which is really ultimately about your purpose is to be here in the present moment. That's the only place that your intuition exists, is here in the present.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trapped in ego loops, it's because we're either worrying about the past or we're tripping over what could be in the future. And so my simple way of teaching manifestation is everything comes down to being in the present and showing up for yourself here and now. So ways to work with me is the Alchemy Collective, which is my membership. We meet live 5 times a month, every Monday. And you're like, 5 times, but there's 4 Mondays a month usually, but some nights are a little bit longer. So what it is I teach one masterclass a month around like manifestation and mindset. We meet twice a month for intuitive development circles. So you get practice in strengthening your intuition. And then we meet every new moon and every full moon to manifest with the moon's magic. So there's this really fun witchy element. I teach on, what's going on in the cosmos and how we can harness that energy in our lives. It's super, super fun. And there's like a library of like 60 hours of classes that have happened, and meditations and tapping videos. And it's a really fun place to be, especially if you're looking to meet other like-hearted spiritual people, spiritual women. It's such an amazing space. And I have a free masterclass right now called Discover Divine Purpose. And it's an introduction to my 9-week program, Activate Your Magic. And that's running live this summer. So this is really for the person who's looking for like a quantum leap, a massive transformation, a complete overhaul of life. We dig into every area of life. It ultimately was born with the one-on-one sessions that I did at the beginning of my business, and it's built out into a program.
Mm-hmm.
It's really incredible. It's really fun. So we focus on self-discovery, self-awareness, and ultimately building out this big, juicy vision for your future and teaching you everything you need to know about manifestation to create that for you. And come hang out with me on social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at I am Sadie Olson. There's 129 Goddess Hangs podcast episodes, which is very fun. It's all about mindset, magic, and manifestation, just like everything I do. And I think that's everything.
That's a lot of things. That's so
Yes,
amazing.
I'm a busy girl and I love it.
Amazing. Okay, well, I will put the links in the show notes as well, so people can find it. Okay, thank you so much, Sadie, for your time and for sharing your
Thank
story with all of us.
you. Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening, and I'll see you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.